Yo, welcome to F1 Air Off, your audio pit stop for F1 news, interviews, and race reviews. I'm your host, Idris.
And I'm Gabriel.
Yo, yeah, Gabriel. Oh.
I gave my full name. I decided. Yes.
Well, so we're on Zoom as we're recording this, and Gabe also did the anime character wearing the glasses kind of like push up the bridge of the nose kind of move there.
They have the what is that noise, like whoosh, like, you know,
the stinger.
Yeah, there's energy waves around me, and then now it's just going to go into me having a dialogue about my past.
Yeah,
and it's going to go on for like 10 minutes.
But that is the essence of anime, though. That is why it is one of my favorite. It's like it's like that medium is just so good at presenting like the most mundane things of life in a manner that is just so riveting. I love it.
I will say it ruined Attack on Titan for me a little bit. Because I was watching Attack on Titan, I'm like, okay, this is weird and interesting. But then, like, there was a moment where a character who is like the stereotypical, like, quiet, you know, like keeps to themselves. They're very emo, but they're secretly really, really good. You know, they had this big epic moment where they're going to fly in and they're going to attack the Titan, and there's all this music, and they're like, I'm going to revenge my friends or something. And then the Titan like knocks them over, right? And they go tumbling down onto the ground, but like not super hard. Like they're just kind of there. And then rather than getting up and then just immediately engaging back into the fight, they're just like, you know, sitting on the ground. And then all of a sudden it goes into just like, ever since I was a child, they just go into this dialogue about their history. Yeah. While the Titan is marching towards them, they're just sitting on the ground, stationary, not doing anything. And I'm just like, oh my God, get up and fly away. Continue to fight. What are you doing? You got knocked down once. We were just about to start this battle, and the whole pacing of this just ended. At least with like initial D, like even if they're doing it mid-corner, it's like you still know like the corner is happening, like they're still sort of doing it, and it's just like they're finding those moments in time. So it's like it almost feels like it's like a medium that can work in that way. It still fits that formula.
It's funny because you say that, and I actually like the juxtaposition of that character being knocked down, right? Because here you have this crazy cool moment that was about to happen, and then they are shown to be insignificant, right? Like an ant to this Titan. And meanwhile, they reveal to you the character's like motivations and backstory. You learn about them, and you're kind of like, I like this character, and then they're dead right in front of your eyes. I love that.
I'm just like, just get out of the way. Like you're sitting there not doing anything. Like you're clearly mobile. Just get up and run or something, man. Yeah. Well, speaking of giants swatting away people that are seemingly insignificant.
So true. I mean, that is a good summary for this race, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I think just real quick, I think it was it Crofty or Brundle? One of them said, yeah, after Max, after P1, it's anyone's race behind them. Like if that wasn't like a sign of the season, a sign of the times, that was really funny.
Well, you know, I would say that if Red Bull has ever had an opportunity to have the perfect season, this would be probably it.
Dude,
and for those of you who do not know what a perfect season is, a perfect season is when a constructor has at least one car win every single race in an F1 season. And it has not happened yet. Mercedes came close in 2016 until Rosberg and Hamilton came together at the Spanish Grand Prix and took each other out. And that ironically was actually Max Verstappen's first career win. So
it all comes full circle.
Yeah, all comes full circle. Yeah, so obviously it is the Spanish Grand Prix of 2023. So we'll do our little track background. The official name of this event is the Formula One AWS Gran Premio de España 2023. Gran Premio.
We need claves in the background.
It's so spicy. That's a very good title. The track here is the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya. It's just outside of Barcelona, which obviously it's a very big, beautiful port town of Spain. And this track, I'm sure you will have seen in the past, has been I forget how much. I think it's been like at least 10,000 laps total of this track has been run by F1 cars because they used it for preseason testing as well in the Grand Prix. And there's a good reason for that. It's a very good track for shaking down cars. Lots of straightaways, lots of high speed corners, lots of medium speed corners. The track is in the city of Barcelona, which is in Spain. The first race was in 1999. The first official race of this track was actually Spanish touring car racing, and then F1 came immediately after. And the race from that is actually a bit iconic. If you've ever seen this picture of the video of Nigel Mansell passing Ayrton Senna down the straight, and their sparks are like their cars are sparking on the either side because they have their front wings are just grinding against the ground. It was like this huge pass. It's a hugely iconic moment in the sport. That was from the first Spanish Grand Prix at that track. The race takes place in the afternoon. The F1 drivers with the most wins are actually a tie between Michael Schumacher and Lewis Hamilton. They both have 6 wins at this race.
Man.
My fun fact for this race, and this is actually the one I think is very fascinating. Between the years of 2007 and 2016, the Spanish Grand Prix was won by 10 different drivers.
Sheesh, that's amazing.
Wild. It was actually Pastor Maldonado's only win and the last win that Williams has had as a racing organization so far.
Wow. Yeah. That is amazing.
I remember that race too, because at the time I did not like Pastor Maldonado.
Pastor Maldonado.
I know he's a great guy. Like, I know he's a good person and everything, and that's wonderful. But at the time when he was driving, he was like Stroll or Marzipan in a sense that, like, early on he was just crashing into everybody.
They called him not the torpedo. It was the Terminator.
Something maybe it wasn't. Like it was something like that. Yeah. He would just always seem to be just like pile driving into other drivers or having some body contact like every single race. It was really wild. But yeah, that was a big win for Williams.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's really sad that they haven't really been able to have
their
wins.
Last win. Oh man.
Yeah, that was 2012.
Now they have Logan Sargent and Alex Albon. Albon, he's good. Sargent, we need to shake him out and figure things out with him.
Oh, yeah. Well, while we're on that subject really quick, did you listen to the Beyond the Grid with Logan Sargent?
No. And actually, I was going to recommend real quick, as you're saying Beyond the Grid, Pastor Maldonado has an excellent episode with Beyond the Grid with Tom Clarkson. So check that out. But no, I have not listened to the Logan Sargent episode. I've been podcasted out this week.
Well, I'm going to say get a chance to listen to it. I don't know if I like Logan Sargent more or less.
That's very confusing.
That interview. It is very confusing.
That's a weird position to be in.
I know. Because he said some things that I'm like, this is very strange. One of the things that he said, okay, he's a rookie, right?
Right.
You would think that a rookie who has a teammate that's been in the sport for several years now, including being racing for Red Bull, we're now currently at the top,
right,
that you would maybe talk to him about race strategy or race tactics and driving on the track. He does not.
Nah, man. Rise and grind.
He looks at Albon's data, but he does not ask Albon about anything. And I can't help but wonder, maybe is that why you're always last? And you could be a little more like maybe you take advantage of the people around you, possibly giving you some advice. I mean,
I'm gonna respect this craft, right? Like that's his stance. He's like, look, man, I'm from Miami. I don't play that. So he's all about that rise and grind mentality. He wakes up, drinks eggs for breakfast, and then he looks at the data, feels very confused, and then just goes out and races, pounds it out on track. That's the way Logan Sargent operates, man. That's what got him to F1. He don't need no handouts.
Oh my gosh, it just seemed really strange to me that, like, why would you not talk to your teammate? I mean, if I had a teammate that had been in the sport for several years, oh my god, I'd be pulling his ear off, asking him questions about stuff.
Yeah.
He's your teammate. Yeah, you got to beat him.
Yeah,
but like, know thine enemy, right? And like, if your enemy is going to talk to you and talk about strategy and things, like what the good sign is if you've been talking to your teammate and then they stop talking to you deliberately because maybe you're getting faster than them. That's when you're making progress. You know what I mean?
But now here's the question: is Stroll getting those lessons from Alonso? Probably
he's probably
not.
Getting him. He's probably just not able to apply them. Like,
too busy dropping chapstick.
Or maybe Alonso is just so good at talking about things that he can just make it sound like he's giving you all this sage advice, but he's just talking in circles, and it's not really like, you have to feel the track, my friend. You have to feel it under your feet. You have to know when to press the gas and when.
Bro, that's not bad. That's not a bad Alonso voice.
I'm not. I wasn't like. I'm just trying to sound like an old sage. Like, you must drive the car left. You must drive the car right. You must drive it straight on the straight.
The right pedal accelerates.
Don't ever go backwards. Do not ever go backwards.
Or else Lakitu will show up with his little cloud and camera.
Feel the fans. Drink the water through your helmet. That guy could read me a dictionary and I'd be like, oh, wow, yeah, never thought of it that way.
Aardvark.
You know,
AARDVARK. That's from our Arthur people.
great, what a wonderful, yeah, yeah. I don't know.
That was the theme song.
Yeah. I don't remember the words. I just remember the hey.
You gotta listen to your heart, listen to the beat, listen to the rhythm of the street.
No, that's a different accent interpretation.
It is. It is.
That's great. Yeah. Well, but anyway, we'll talk about Stroll and Alonso a little bit here.
So yeah, one of the big things for qualifying prior to us stepping into it, big track change, and that brought a new track record. So they removed a portion of the final chicane. Actually, no, they removed the final chicane like flat out.
Yeah,
like,
altogether.
It's gone. It's bye-bye. So still not a flat out corner, even with these massive downforce cars. But I mean, when you're watching it, what did you notice in particular about that section that they removed?
It used to be this way. I don't remember when they put that chicane in, but it used to be this turn where it was just a 4-corner, like it was like a 3, like 1, 2, 3, basically, to go back down the straight. And each of them are really high speed corners, but there's also an elevation change because it dips down.
Yeah.
And so that change in elevation also creates what we've talked about before, was sort of a lateral movement in the car towards the outside, because not only are you making the turn physically, but the elevation is also pushing you into the direction of gravity, is kind of pulling you down and away. What that resulted in was a lot of drivers actually going into the gravel trap out of that last corner.
Which your boy Alonso did.
Which Alonso did, which, like kind of busted up his floor. I'm kind of surprised that they were not able to pull out like a full flat out section with how much downforce these cars have. But I wonder if maybe part of it is just because it's a new change. They're a little bit cautious and they don't necessarily.
That might be part of it, yeah.
Much. I would be willing to bet that by this time next year, they will be doing flat out around that corner, especially if they do some testing there again. Which, by the way, they're doing the Pirelli test after this race, right?
Yeah. And also that reminded me too, like, I don't think this current configuration of the track was what they were doing preseason testing on. So so this is why it was so new to everyone. So this was the brand spanking new first time. So
So you were seeing a lot of lifting coming out of that last corner. To
I get it.
Gravel.
When there's an elevation change too, like on a corner, a turn like that, that's a little. It can be sketchy, right? So you want to kind of dance your way through.
Yeah, it's a dangerous place to lose it. If you understeer, you just going straight into the gravel, and there's a little wall because the grandstand's right there. But yeah, I think I honestly think it's a good change for the track, because I do like that sequence of corners, and especially if it's nailed, because it's a really quick, like right, down to the final straight. So they carried a lot of extra speed coming down that straight, and subsequently, like we said, it broke the track speed record, because obviously these cars are a lot faster than they were before they had that track layout. So, and especially with the Red Bull and their DRS.
Yeah, absolutely.
Their BS DRS.
Or just their BS. I was just gonna say just their normal like
the normal Red Bull BS, you know.
I'm just thinking back to last episode where you mentioned when the Red Bull was being hoisted by the crane, and underneath it just says, "We're cheating."
Yeah. It's a weird feeling to have, to wish that a team was cheating. You know?
No, I get it. Because it's just like unbelievable how good they are, right? Given like the regulation change and everything.
Yeah. Well, and you know what's crazy is I didn't wish that Mercedes was cheating when they were dominating. And maybe it's just because of the team. Maybe it's just because of how they're presenting themselves and how they sort of the things that they do, the way that they act outside of the race, that makes me feel this way. You know?
And you know what's funny about that? Like, at least when Mercedes was dominating, it felt like the Galactic Empire, but not like in a bad way. You know what I mean? They felt like the Galactic Empire because they had all the resources. They had like a very precise, clean workflow. They were good at what they did, that kind of thing, right? Yeah. But then it feels like with these, like with Red Bull, they kind of feel like an upstart gang that has gotten really, really popular and really hot, and you kind of feel like you got to cut them down in size.
Okay, no, so here, I'm going to get real nervous. So this is it. Okay. Mercedes felt like the Federation in Star Trek. Okay.
Okay.
Because the
I'm with you.
Federation, what the Federation did was that it had a no interference policy. It was basically, we want you to join the Federation. We want to advance and protect your culture and your planet. But we want to incorporate you into our Federation to give you the economic benefits and benefit us economically and benefit us culturally, and be able to do commerce and be able to, kind of, federate the planetary system and whatever thing. Red Bull feels like the Empire, where they're just like coming in and they're just like, you're either with us or you're without us, or you're against us, sort of mentality. They're closing everybody in the trash compactor, and it's just, I'm not. I think that's very apt. And then like Vader would be like Helmet Marco. No, he's too cool for Helmet Marco. I have a lot of feelings about Helmet Marco. I think Helmet Marco is Grand Moff Tarkin.
Yes, bro. You know what's really funny
because even Vader was not like, even Grand Moff Tarkin was not afraid of Vader. People always forget that.
That's true.
He was on the top of the food chain. It was not Vader on the top of the food chain.
Yeah. So here's a flashback story to high school. In my AP European history class, 10th grade, my history teacher, he put up a picture of Grand Moff Tarkin on like the slideshow, right? He was like, does anyone know who this is? And I was like, oh, that's Grand Admiral Moff Tarkin. He's like, ooh, Idris, the speed with which you answered that question.
Nerd.
Something along those lines. He's like, bro, give it a couple seconds, man.
yeah. Well, see, that would have been me too. I would have just been like, yeah.
He's like, then why would you ask?
Yeah, right.
Anyways, okay.
Anyway,
so
yes, so okay.
So evil Empire Red Bull, I feel you about that. Wanting like you want it to be true that there is some tomfoolery going on just because of the way they behave, right? They're so smarmy, right? Yeah. I think you want the villain's advantage to be because they're cheating or doing something wrong and not being on merit. I feel that.
This is like how you want the bad guy to always have some inherent weakness that the good guys can exploit. And that's the thing that's unfortunately the case, is that apparently Red Bull doesn't have any sort of like weak spots.
Well, we'll talk at the end of this episode.
But anyway, continuing on with qualifying, like we mentioned, Alonso had some floor damage after hitting the gravel trap. That really compromised his quali, which is a shame, because I do think that he probably could have put that Aston Martin a little higher than he did.
Yeah.
Because I'm curious to whether or not they were able to actually do anything about the floor before the race, because his qualifying did not translate into the race either.
Right.
Although he didn't do too bad, but we'll get to that. But let's just talk about McLaren, because what a surprise! Like that was good job, so Norris. Man. Yeah.
I mean, both, not just Norris, Piastri too, man.
Piastri was not bad. Yeah, he was up there too. Yeah.
When the McLaren wants to drive well, if it's just like, after a long smoke break, it's just like, okay, today I will perform. Then it does the job, man. It's so good.
That sounds like it'd be more of like a Ferrari than a McLaren. You think the McLaren would be ready to go the whole time?
True. I mean, actually, it's more like an Alpine, but Alpine never shows up, right? So it's kind of like that.
I don't know if I want to race now.
It's. Do you remember that video of what is it? It's oh, I want you to fire the missiles, but no, I am retired.
But I'm retired. Then go take a nap. Sit fast, I miss it. Yeah. Oh,
that's Alpine. Yeah. But I think it must be the Triple Crown livery that they're running. Because
I know they're not gonna keep it. I wish they would. It looks so much better.
Yeah.
And I'm not a superstitious person, clearly, because everyone was talking about Alonso, winning this one because of the 3-3 thing, which just did not pan out to be anything. But
just numbers.
I think the same thing with the Browns. Like, as a football organization, I think they need to put something on the side of the helmet, and then maybe they will win something. It's happened. There's precedent for it. So. Yeah. Just saying.
Yeah.
Good job for McLaren. I know the commentators, they were speculating that the McLaren almost has like sort of a single race or single qualifying pace, but just can't translate that to the race.
100%. Yeah.
And I know this was they brought some changes to the package this time around to this.
Yes, because that were supposed to have debuted a few races ago, I believe.
Right. Norris kind of took a hit in the race, and we'll kind of talk about that. But honestly, as for qualifying pace, they did a great job. I was really, impressed. I really do hope that their car setup is making the difference here.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm with you. I think, and that kind of begs the question too. It's like, is Lando and Piastri, are they kind of getting more in sync with the car? I don't know, because it seems like from interviews that Norris has kind of divulged information about the McLaren, it seems like it's the same chassis design philosophy that they've used for the last several years, right? And like, I can't imagine that it's a massive change that they've implemented that has fixed these things, right? Those problems are probably still inherent there, unless they did like some major rework, right? Which feels unlikely. But you know, the point is, good for McLaren. Really happy that they were able to pull this out, and I want to see continued McLaren success in the future.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with that. Well, let's talk about Perez, because unfortunately,
oh my God,
he did not get out of Q2.
He needs some milk.
It's so weird. It's like
it's happening to the wrong driver.
Yeah. I'm hoping that Perez is not getting in his head. I know he had an off. He was struggling with the car, and that's like kind of partially what compromised him. He beached it and had to recover and clean off his tires. But that's why it's like, you know, we talk about Marco being the Grand Moff Tarkin. He kind of is. Like, he's just sort of, and like, especially if like Perez is letting some of this stuff that he's been saying get to his head, I worry that his performance in qualifying his performance generally is taking a hit because of it.
Yeah.
Because he started P11. So
yeah, and it's been a few weekends now. This is not like, I think this is what, the third weekend in a row now or third race weekend in a row where things have not been so hot.
Yeah, well, he definitely did. I mean, Monaco, he didn't even put up a qualifying time.
Yeah, it wasn't even a blip on the radar.
Yeah, but you know who did actually was doing really, really good, and I was like I was surprised to see was Hulkenberg.
Man, Hulk smashed. He smashed, bro.
He was smashing it. Yeah,
so
he
good.
was doing really good. I saw that the Haas were really fast.
Yes,
on the straightaways,
which is wild considering what happens in the race, and we'll get to it. But I like to always think about where people finish and look at their team and look at their engine suppliers, and like it was all over the place, right? Like if you look at the race results, like at one point in the race, all like the Ferrari powered teams were just not doing hot. It's like, guys, what
happened?
Yeah, and you can kind of think about the car design philosophy behind it, but we'll get to that too. But no, I'm with you, man. Hulkenberg can drive that Haas really well. Something about it, I think, syncs with how his driving style. Maybe he's just always needed kind of like a Ferrari engine underneath him, between his legs to get going. I
was also wondering if maybe the air, like the weather, because it was like sort of looming, sort of rain, sort of maybe
so
the
cooler
density of the air sort of had a change on how the slipperiness of the Ferraris, powered cars. I mean, who knows? Every subtle little change can make a profound difference. It's insane. 100%. Like even just a winglet ant falling off of the car can suddenly be like, oh, you're like 6/10 down. It's like, well, why? Oh, this little tiny piece of carbon fiber the size of a credit card fell off your wing. You know, it's nuts. It's insane. Yeah. But yeah, no, good job on Hulkenberg. And you know, it's funny. I was talking to Ben. Ben just is like, man, he's like, I really hope that guy gets on the podium at least once. He's just like, it's like, I feel bad for the dude.
You and everyone else, man.
Yeah, it's like, I'm not a huge fan of Hulkenberg, but my God, I give that man a third place. Like, you know, get him something. Yeah. You know? Oh. But anyway, well, you know, hey, maybe this is his year. He's been getting close, and who knows what that Haas will do next year or even towards the end of this year. The cars are always improving. But.
Yeah, we want it to be this year because we don't want to hear 20 years from now, like, man, if coach just put me in.
I could have put it in fourth quarter. I would have been state champs, no doubt. No doubt in my mind.
You see those mountains over there, man?
How much you want to think I throw a football over them mountains? Hey, Kip, you know a lot about cyberspace? You ever looked into time travel? Easy. I looked into it myself. Right on.
Man.
Oh man, you can tell I'm a millennial because I have that movie ingrained into my brain. Speaking of memories, flashes of memory coming back, let's talk about the two Mercedes coming together in qualifying.
It was so, like, what was that, dude? So weird. And what was weird about it, too, was like, okay, so for those who didn't see, Lewis was like on a hot lap. He was coming in, and Russell was just kind of there. And Hamilton's like, okay, let me just go around and so I can continue on my way. And then Russell just moves to block him. Like,
yeah, well,
so like, why?
At first, when I saw it, I thought that Russell was giving Hamilton a tow.
Okay, so and that's a fair assumption, right? You could assume that maybe that would happen.
Maybe that's what Hamilton thought was happening. But then, like, the Ferrari was coming out of the pits, and I think George like jiggled to the left to like move out of the way of the Ferrari, and just didn't see Hamilton coming up on the other side. And then they came together. Thankfully, it wasn't a huge damage; it was just like a wing. But I think George immediately apologized because he had no idea what happened. So I don't think he knew that Hamilton was coming up, which that seems like a problem for the team that you wouldn't tell them where your driver is, especially if Hamilton's behind you. You think they want Russell would want to give him a tow.
This is what I'm saying. And Mercedes has not been on it as far as like strategy and these kinds of things are concerned. This would never have happened 3-4 years ago, right?
No, I think they're off their game.
Yeah,
a little bit here. Oh, let me call him.
Good morning.
Hey, Toto. Yeah, hey, man. So we saw what happened between Lewis and Russell. Pretty crazy. What happened there?
Traffic. I need a vacation.
Toto, can you tell us a little bit about whether or not you think this would happen 4 or 5 years ago?
What are you, my father? If you yield only to a conqueror, then prepare to be conquered. You have no respect for logic. I have no respect for those with no respect for logic.
Look, I like Mercedes. I have a backpack. Actually, I picked up at Austin Grand Prix last year. It was nice.
No shit.
But, I don't like seeing these cars crashing together. So what happened? This wouldn't have happened 3-4 years ago. So you tell me.
You should not drink and bake. Now this is the plan. Get your ass to Mars. If it bleeds, we can kill it. When the governor gets here, call me. We're going to play a wonderful game called Who is Your Daddy and What Does He Do?
Okay. I'll take that answer.
Fair.
That's fine.
That's fair.
Thank you.
That is valid. Okay. Yeah, I know you're a busy man, Toto. Congrats on the race today.
Yeah. And tell Susie we say hi.
Tell Susie we say hello.
She'll give away our position any chance she gets. No deal.
Thanks, man. Okay. Well, okay, let's talk about the race. Race did not really reflect qualifying unless you're Max Verstappen. Because
he starts first and he finishes first.
Yeah, I mean, start of the race, he had a decent start. Carlos had a good launch, and he pulled up alongside the Red Bull, and I thought he was going to be able to challenge him on the outside.
Man,
but did you notice that Verstappen like pushed Sainz like towards the outside, like? His classic Verstappen move.
Do you mean did he pull a similar move that George Russell did to him a few weeks ago? Weird.
Yes.
Huh.
Yes.
With cold tires, they should know better.
Yeah, even though they were basically had like the same amount of car alongside each other for that move. Yeah, I mean, I think Carlos knew to back out because he knew that Max was not gonna be yielding for that.
No way.
So Max took off, and he went off in his merry little way. So we're not even going to talk about him because there was really nothing to talk about. I mean,
so just so you know, for the rest of the episode, when we say P1, we're not talking about Max P1. He's like P0. P1 would be who gets P2.
He's PM. Yeah. He's PMAX.
He is the interval.
Yeah, he is the interval. That's right.
That'd be a good villain name. They call me the interval.
The interval. First casualty of the day was Lando Norris. Yeah, I got a little testy with Lewis. Got his wing got broken off, so he had to pit for a new wing, and that just knocked him all the way to the back, which was really unfortunate for him because a third place, but even to be fair though, I think he got crowded out really early too, so I think he was just he fell right back. I wonder if he got maybe a little too punchy there. Yeah,
you have the whole race to think about, and that's the thing with I feel bad for Lando because he definitely has these moments where he's on it, and he has I think he has the mettle and the caliber and the character traits to be a world champion, but then sometimes when he's in a position where he can win, maybe he's just so hungry for that win or hungry for that high position that maybe he kind of loses sight on maybe I should back off right now, right?
Yeah,
and that comes with experience, right?
Right. Well, and that's the thing too. It's like I think it's a weird game that they have to play where they're sort of balancing. They don't want to crash out. They don't want to be responsible for taking anybody out. They have to think about their race down long term. But also too, it's still kind of frustrating that if they just have a little piece of car break off, then all of a sudden they're just like out of contention.
Yeah.
I wish that was different, and I think that only comes with simplifying the aerodynamics on the cars, which I think they were trying to do, especially with the front wings. So it probably doesn't have as much of an effect as it used to, but it still has enough of an effect, right?
Right. One of the wild things too on the start lap, that there was a little infographic that they put up that showed the start times of between Carlos and Max. Just looking at their time gaps to go from 0 to 200 kilometers per hour. 2.78 seconds for Carlos, 2.76 for Max. That's a monstrous gap of 200ths of a second. I don't know. This is the problem with Carlos. I'm a fan of Carlos. I really like him. I think he's fun to watch driving. Smooth operator. He's a dog, right?
Right.
But his starts are always if there's one part of his racecraft you can critique, I think it's his starts. His starts and also his lack of gutsiness to initiate an overtake, right? Just to pull a max, you know what I mean?
Right.
So that was kind of a bummer to see. So
yeah, well, some drivers. I was gonna say some drivers are just not good with their starts, but they're good elsewhere. I think everybody has some, but that makes it interesting, right? Like it adds that kind of extra element of interesting dynamic to the drivers between each other, even.
Yeah, correct.
What's going on with Alfa Romeo and their change of sponsorship?
Yeah, dude, I'm not sure. So I was watching the race today and I saw kick all over the car and I was like,
I noticed that too, what? And I'm like, so did they get bought out?
So this is straight from their website, okay? Alfa Romeo F1 Team Stake will make a decisive entry into the world of streaming as it launches a major partnership with, all caps, Kick, an innovative and community-driven live streaming platform built and targeting a global audience.
Is this like Kickstarter's like rebrand or like a different?
No. This doesn't look like
Kick.
Yeah, I think what it's meant to do is to get like entertainers and big stars, right? Like Drake is listed on the website, and Trainwrecks TV. I'm not familiar with that, but it looks like they're just a streaming platform that partners up with celebrities and big name people and gives them direct access to their audiences.
Weird. Okay.
Yeah. So I was like, what happened to Stake? So, but no, Stake is still there. It's just that Kick is another sponsor.
Ain't that a kick in the head? All right. Well, it definitely didn't help Alfa Romeo during this race. So
kicked them to the end of the pack. That's what it did.
Kicked them to the end of the pack. Yeah, that's right. Let's take a moment here. Let's talk about George Russell because he had some interesting things going. He had a very interesting race. It seemed like he was having a lot of fun out there.
Tell the people what's up with that. What my boy George do? What my boy George say?
So George has a tremendous power that he just discovered this race, and that is that he can claim that there might be rain, and suddenly everybody freaks out. Christian Horner sticking his hand out to feel for rain. Everyone's like, "Oh, this rain is coming! It's gonna happen!" And he's like, "Oh, blimey! Excuse me, is that just sweat on my visor? Oh, I think it was sweat. Oh, I'm terribly sorry." Oh he God. Literally had sweat on his visor and he thought it was rain. Dude was
so funny.
He was like, I don't know if that was stress, anxiety, or like what was happening, but like I guess Martin Brundle says it can happen. So
hilarious.
Okay.
Hilarious. Man, how much sweat do you think he's generating in that helmet? I mean, he's a taller than average driver, right? So
yeah,
I guess maybe proportionately he's getting some sweat all up in that visor.
I don't know. Well, be curious to find out. I wonder which drivers sweat the most.
Ooh, all right. Who'd you put your money on?
I'm gonna say probably. Ooh, it's tough to say because my immediate thought would be the Finnish drivers because like they're not used to the high temperature, so I feel like they would secrete a lot of sweat.
Secrete. Oh my God, it's such a word.
It is.
That's a word.
It is a word. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I'm honestly thinking Lando Norris because he just feels like a sweaty dude.
Okay.
Or maybe no. Hulkenberg doesn't feel like he sweat a drop in his life. He just feels like he just like somehow
he's just cool.
Like, yeah. We know Lewis Hamilton sweats.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm gonna have to think about that. Maybe we'll poll everybody. Who do you think is the sweatiest driver? I mean, they could say Max because that wouldn't be inaccurate. He is a very sweaty, aggressive driver.
And we don't mean sweaty in an Apex Legends like.
No,
I'm running in with Wraith. Like
we mean
running and gunning.
Sweat.
Yeah, physical sweat.
Yes, physically sweat.
Yeah. I'm gonna say my boy Nick DeVries is a sweaty boy. He looks like it.
Yeah, I could see DeVries, but honestly, maybe it's George because he's the one that's mistaking his sweat for rain. After
you know what, so that would make sense. It comes full circle.
It's full circle. So who knows. Let's kind of get a little bit into some of the tire strategy here because there was definitely a really interesting, a really wide spread of strategy because it feels like a lot of races, most of the time, the car teams will generally kind of do one of like maybe two different strategies. Mm-hmm. But like at one point, the top four, there was somebody on hards, mediums, and softs, which doesn't really happen that often,
Right.
I think they put Max out on mediums first, and everybody was pretty much on softs. So they're doing that quick stint and then the long stint rather than the long and then the quick.
Right.
But one thing that I thought was really interesting, and I'm sure you noticed too, especially when it came to the Mercedes, was that Hamilton and Russell were actually really happy on the softs.
Yes. For a super long time too.
Was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I mean, what do you think? Like, how do you even think that? Do you think that had to do with some of their upgrades, like their suspension changes, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, that definitely factors into it, right? Without seeing their specs, you can, in their design sheets, you never know what they actually changed to make that happen. But I would imagine that if you have a car that's better balanced, right, you are going to have an easier time of, like, more even wear on your tires, right? So I could see the softs being brought in more easily. They can maintain their tread depth a lot longer than it would be had they had an imbalanced car, right? Where it's, maybe heavier in the front. Because remember, Lewis has kind of alluded to that where in his radio messaging where he can't really get a good feel for the car based on where he's actually physically located, right? And not having side pods, I would imagine, assuming all the weight is the same between this B-spec car with the side pods and the A-spec, which was 0 side pods, adding weight to, the rear of Lewis, right, or next to his head where he's sitting in the car, I would imagine that actually helps with where the balancing is, right? If they've moved stuff from the front towards the back, right?
Right.
There's a conservation of that weight. So I could see it being easier on the vehicle and the tires in that way, but without really having the details on it, it's kind of tough to say. Right. And the suspension changes could also really have been what really did the job there.
Right.
So
I would say also just giving them confidence in the car would probably make it so they don't have to be as rough with the vehicle. They can drive a little smoother, and that's therefore going to conserve your tires. It's amazing.
Absolutely.
It's amazing how much all of that factors into whether or not a car is going to perform in a specific way.
Yep.
Like, because it's like if you have to like work harder to get the car to perform properly, like you could be wearing out other components. So it's all connected. It's remarkable. I think that was the key to Mercedes pulling out this 2.3 that they did, was the fact that they were able to pull out that longer stint on the softs and just be comfortable with them generally. They almost lasted as long as the mediums did. So I would say going into the future, if this is a knock-on effect of these changes for Mercedes, if I was a Mercedes engineer, I would capitalize on that. 100%. I would be like, okay, if this means that we're maybe not necessarily faster or, performing necessarily any better, but it gives our drivers more confidence and they can conserve their tires more, then we're going to factor that into our strategy 100%, because race position is on a lot of tracks key, especially street circuits. So I'm looking forward to see how well the Mercedes do on their tires going forward.
And something interesting to note too about the Mercedes and the softs, towards the end, Checo came in for softs, right?
Yeah.
And everyone's like, I think probably from the zeitgeist, right? Like how the community was feeling when that happened. People were like, oh man, Checo's going to catch Russell. It's going to be Red Bull 1-3, right? With Lewis in P2.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is, I don't think he was catching him at the rate that people thought he would be. Meaning that the Mercedes was actually doing a really good job on the softs, even though they were a lot older than the softs that Checo had been using. So that, I think that's a really, really interesting data point that Mercedes can take back and sit down with and examine a bit more.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I'm glad to see it. Anything that Mercedes can do to kind of fix what they're doing, it's a testament to them as a race organization. Yeah, honestly, because they're just like, we started out terrible, but guess what? Like, we're fighting our way back mid-season. Like,
guess who's back? We'll save that song for when Mercedes eventually wins.
Yeah. Oh,
if a win
Back in Black or something. Yeah. So, while we're talking about sort of like, there wasn't a whole lot of passing on track. There were some moves, but one thing that was real sketchy was that move on Ocon.
Oh my God,
with
bro.
Alonso. What happened there? Because that was dangerous.
That was wild, man.
Yeah.
Do you think a little bit of this is because Ocon's like, well, Fernando, you have left the team, so now, I was a little pissed when you left the team. Because he was a little, like, he seemed kind of pissy about Alonso leaving Alpine. Like, bro, we all saw Drive to Survive, season 5. They didn't give him a contract until like last second, right? Even though Otmar was like, "Oh, we have a contract in hand. And we're gonna work it with the king," and
Yeah, and I'm just gonna say, for those people who watched Drive to Survive but didn't actually watch that season, I'm gonna give you a little bit of information that you may or may not have known.
Gabe's corner.
That's right. Yeah, hot takes right here, burning hot, coming out on the skillet. These are the Applebee's chicken fajitas of takes right now. Okay, Esteban. Esteban Ocon should have nothing but a revered respect and appreciation for Fernando Alonso, because if it had not been for Fernando holding off Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel at the what was that race? What was his race win? It was was it Portugal?
Hungarian Grand Prix.
The Hungarian Grand Prix. If Alonso had not held off Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel for as long as he did during that race, Ocon would not have gotten that win. And that is not something that they talk about in Drive to Survive. They make it sound like, oh, Ocon did the whole thing himself. They were hunting him down. Yeah. Sebastian Vettel was cutting into those intervals. He would have passed him if he had gotten past Alonso, but Alonso put up a fight.
Yes.
And kept him behind.
Yes.
So Ocon has no reason to be like doing that, because Alonso essentially was easily, I would say easily 60% of that win. I'm just going to say it. Like I said, Applebee's chicken fajita take. Man. That's my take on it.
Ooh. What kind of tip you leaving on that order?
Well, I mean, I guess I'm the one delivering it, so I guess it depends on how many people leave the tip for me for my hot take.
Okay.
I didn't spill it on their lap. I guess that's
that's something.
But yeah, it was whatever his motivations. It was a bad move. He moved way too fast, way too late. He pushed him into the entrance of the pit lane, which is why it was bad. Because imagine if a car was coming out of that pit. He literally moved into the pit lane. Do you think Alonso's going to look to his right and check for traffic? No, he would have just side swiped whoever was coming out of the pit.
It's as Brundle says, a day late and $1 short.
Yeah,
I like that.
That's right. Yeah,
it's a day late and $1 short.
Exactly right. That was a real sketchy move. But I mean, hey, nobody got hurt. Okay, we're good. Like, that's fine. But like, don't do it again. That was not cute.
I mean, there was no penalty for that though. It wasn't. I don't even think it was investigated afterwards.
That's a problem. I think the only person that got a penalty was Yuki. Got that 5 second for pushing Zhou Guanyu wide.
Yep.
I will say, at least talking specifically for the Alpha Atari team, there's all this talk about De Vries losing his seat, and Yuki is definitely helping De Vries keep that seat, I would say, a little bit. After Monaco and after today, Yuki better, kind of keep things going, because we know that Red Bull is... Well, we know Red Bull's cutthroat.
Yeah,
they gave De Vries like 3 races to improve. I mean, De Vries technically finished ahead of Yuki. Or no, he was below Yuki, but just by one place. But even still, it's just like, Yuki, I think, can do it. But I think it's just, he just got to work. He just got to get harder, and he's got to not make these mistakes. So
yeah, it's unfortunate. Because I like Yuki. I think he was actually having a really good race until then. So that sucks because he was in the points. But that 5 second penalty, just knocked him out.
Yeah, well, because like everybody who was behind him was only back by like a second each. So like,
it's his emotional. I think it's the emotional game for him that he just like, if he just keeps that in check, I think he would be able to bring results in a bit more consistently.
I agree.
Or maybe not. Maybe his emotion is what gets him his success, right? I don't know, but
it's tough to say. I mean, all I know is that he tends to be a very hot-headed, and it just doesn't really seem to be translating to good race finishes. So who knows?
Good point.
Who knows? But hey, I think it's better to be fiery in the car than be basically dormant and silent, which seems like most of De Vries's races. So just saying. So we end up getting this is the big moment, Mercedes gets a 2-3, and despite Max just maxing out the race, going
P-Max, remember,
maxing it. I am very, very, very impressed with Mercedes' turnaround here. This is a great result for them. It pushed Aston Martin down. They surpassed Aston Martin for the Constructors' Championship, which just proves that Alonso's been carrying that team this entire time so far. And I'm good for them. Good for them. Great result. I'm very glad to see Lewis back on the podium. Even though he was P2, he was smiling, and that made me feel very, very happy.
Also, I thought it was very funny that Nico was the post-race interviewer. And Lewis, I think there's still some tension between the two.
And I don't think there ever will not be.
Yeah, and Matt and Nico was like, yeah, so you still want to race? And Lewis like, yeah, flat out. And then I think Nico had like a follow-up question, and Lewis had already been peacing out. He's like, I ain't got time to waste for you, you know?
Yeah, ain't nobody got time for that.
All right, so we're gonna pivot to a segment that we call Mamma Mia Scuderia.
Stay out. Why? Bloody better do fire. No, please, I said please, to wait and discuss with me.
Wait, what are these tires?
Sorry, it's a mistake.
So this part of the show is where we talk about everyone's favorite stable, the prancing horses, Scuderia Ferrari. Bruh, what is going on with Ferrari? I know they're like the punching bag, right? And I see all the memes, but oh my God, Leclerc was not even a factor in this.
I know.
Sainz.
He started pit lane.
Sainz went from smooth operator to, I don't know, give me
frantic, stressed out operator.
Yeah, to like tears for fears, and like a matter of just 3 or 4 laps, and I just cannot. And that's no shade to Tears for Fears. I love that band.
Yeah, no,
like,
for sure. Yeah,
Songs from the Big Chair, one of my favorite albums of all time.
Right.
Like those guys can croon, but like how it makes me mad because like I don't really like Ferrari, like the team itself. You know what I mean? As an institution, right? And I would almost rather Ferrari be in the Red Bull position, because then I feel like the dislike for them would be justified, right? But they're like repeatedly punching themselves in the face. And like whether it's like Carlos disagreeing with his engineer, whether it's Leclerc doing the same thing, whether it's Leclerc like binning it and just going right in the gravel traps, something is wrong. How can this team be so popular and loved by everyone, yet the last time they won a championship was in 2007, and then they take a world champion in Fernando Alonso, chew him up, spit him out, do the same thing with Vettel, and it looks like they're doing the exact same thing with Leclerc, and it makes me so sad. How?
I just think that they're stubborn. Like, it's just incapable of really making the changes and improvements that matter, and also having the patience to go forward with those changes and making sure they stick.
Yeah.
Ferrari just always seems to prioritize the wrong thing. It's like they always compromise so heavily in one direction that they don't need to be compromising in. And I don't understand why. I don't get it. I feel so much for Charles Leclerc. He just like, it's like we're witnessing somebody's soul leaving their body slowly, bit by bit.
Oh my God,
it's just
so true.
Like so depressing to see. I think that him and Perez need to just form their own race team and surround themselves with people that are gonna like appreciate their talent and like
good vibes team.
Yeah, just a good vibes team. You know, Totino's F1.
There you go.
Because like both him and I worry about Perez. Like Perez seems to be holding up for now, but like after what Helmut Marko said about like Max never looking at him as like any sort of challenger and that like it's already over, I'm just like I cannot with this team. Because when hearing Helmut Marko say that, what that tells me is that even if Perez was in first place and Max was in second, they would probably try and get Perez to move aside for Max rather than let Perez get the win.
Dude, I think it's worse than that actually. I think it's a scenario if like, let's say Checo wins this year, like Helmut Marko would chalk that up to, oh, well, Max just had a bad year. It wouldn't be Checo winning on merit. You know what I mean? Which is almost worse, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. I feel like Ferrari is almost primed to either drop both Carlos and Charles for like just new drivers because they don't know what to do, or one of them is gonna. I know as much as Charles wants to drive for Ferrari, I think Ferrari is losing its luster as far as being a team that people want to drive for.
They're not. They've shown themselves to be incompetent. That's what it comes down to.
Well,
like,
in the further and further away that their winning history goes, the less and less people are going to be interested. You know what I mean? I think people still want to drive for Mercedes, even though they had bad years, because their win streak was within like the best 10 years.
Yeah.
You know, Ferrari, like you said, have not had a championship since 2007.
Right.
That is a long time ago. Now, I think people are probably now younger drivers are probably gravitating more towards Mercedes and Red Bull at this point than they are Ferrari.
And they're probably looking at Aston Martin too, right? Like I'm sure McLaren is also on this kind of like level as Ferrari as well, right? At least McLaren kind of shows some I guess like some bright flashes every now and then, right?
Yeah.
But I'm sure Lando Norris is like, I got to get out of here, you know?
Because I'm still hoping for that Williams resurgence, man. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah. Well, I mean, since it's owned by like some kind of conglomerate, I think it's a conglomerate, and also it's like some venture capital company that has invested in them. So it's just kind of like, well,
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. Thank you for engaging with me on this because Mamma Mia, just I cannot believe it. It is.
Yeah, I can't either. I don't get it. I don't know what's going on, and I don't really think it's bound to change anytime soon, honestly.
Yep.
Now let me give you my podium vibe. Let's do the podium vibe check here. So I'll start out by saying that I personally, the race wasn't particularly super exciting. It's not that it wasn't bad, or it's not that it was bad. It was a good race. It just, it wasn't DTS level, which is what I think everybody is looking for. And I actually have a whole thought about this. I think we're going to devolve further into this, but I do think that there is a problem with the Drive to Survive fans having this expectation that each race is going to have the same level of drama that the episodes show, and it's just not the case. Because apparently viewership for the sport is going down. People are losing interest quickly. We look at Miami Grand Prix, they had to last minute do huge discounts on sales because nobody was going to those races. Yeah. Obviously they were expensive, but
but I think Miami in particular, there was also a thing of I went to the first one. The second one isn't as important kind of thing, right?
Yeah, that's true. So Aston Martin had a bit of an off weekend, but one thing I will say is that Aston Martin is still showing a very professional level of consistency and also reliability. Their cars are holding up really well. They're being wonderfully... What are you laughing at? Did you mute yourself again?
I muted myself so I could laugh because I was looking at everything is chaos. There's no order. Mother Nature and Father, I don't give a fuck about you.
Yeah. Should we talk about that real quick?
Yeah, if you want.
Okay. Yeah. So everybody was like, Alonso's going to win this because there's all these 33 indicators. It would have been his 33rd win. It would have been, it's his 33% of his race, something 33% of race events or something entries. Yeah. He was in the 33rd building hut and stuff like that. There's all these things that indicated 33. And so there's this whole this is the one. Clearly Alonso didn't win. And so my responses to that is everything is chaos. There is no order. Mother Nature and Father Time don't give a fuck about your patterns. And that's really seemingly the reality of it because he didn't win. It was just Max again.
No, Michael.
No.
Nostradamus
was wrong, and so was everyone else. So to kind of round out my thoughts, this is a discussion I seriously want to have, and the minute I heard it, I'm like, that is a good idea, and they need to do it.
Yep.
Martin Brundle and Crofty had a great idea when they were commentating, when they were talking about the DRS system. They were talking about so when you're in a race, okay, obviously you have to be a second away from the car in front of you in order to activate the DRS, right? That does not just apply to the person that's ahead of you in the actual race. If you're behind a back marker, you can use the DRS to pass to get an extra performance boost through the field. And you can also use the DRS liberally during qualifying session. And Martin and Crofty were they probably shouldn't really be doing that because they said that the DRS originally when it was created was designed as a passing benefit. It wasn't designed to just make the cars fast. It was designed to help with passing because that was the problem. They were having a hard time passing each other because of the air. And so this was going to give them a chance to gain an extra speed just mechanically in order to pass each other. And so they were talking about how it would be better as a lap time to show the cars more on merit just as their normal aero package just by themselves and just not be allowed to use the DRS in qualifying. But they were also suggesting, and this I actually really like because there's a tie-in to this with IndyCar, there's a parallel that would be for this. They were suggesting the DRS should have a usage time limit, 100 seconds across a race. That would mean that once you use up that 100 seconds, you don't use the DRS anymore. So it would give it a more strategic element to usage. And in IndyCar, they have something like this. The IndyCar has a power boost button, and every driver has that button, but they can only use it a certain amount of time during a race. And once it's done with, it's done.
Right.
So like it's a limited use, and it's not even just them. Like for example, Formula E. Formula E has similar stuff too. They
Like
also
the fan
have that,
boost and everything.
they have that boost thing,
Yeah.
which is only a limited time, and it's only for a certain amount of power. So I honestly feel like for the sake of trying to limit the playing field, like as a course correction, I don't think that would be a bad idea. I personally think that would add an element of strategy. I think it would slow down some of the faster teams, particularly Red Bull, because their DRS is the double DRS system. I know that they would definitely whine and cry about it, but hey man, this is what happens in F1. Do you think Lotus wasn't mad when they banned skirt cars? You know, do you think that like Brabham wasn't pissed when they won with the fan car and it got immediately banned? Like this is what happens, and I think it's for the sake of the sport and for the sake of the competition. I think that might be something worth looking at.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think anybody's talking about it. I haven't heard anything except for just this moment, but I think that would probably be a good approach. What do you think?
No, I think it's a fantastic idea. And just to kind of comment on the 100-second allocation or having whatever it would be, right? I think you can just calculate it per each track, right? Like you only get 90 seconds here, you get 80 seconds here, you get just a minute, right? And I agree 100% because the race where Max just flew by Lewis, was it Lewis? No, it was George. Like using DRS, it was like, that was ridiculous. Like that speed with which he overtook George was just kind of mind boggling, and everything is fine with it. I mean, they're not cheating or anything, but I think maybe curbing the effect and impact of DRS would definitely have a much better impact as far as parity and as far as the competition is concerned, right? Yeah. And maybe that makes things a bit more interesting for people, because that is the biggest complaint that we're hearing right now, right? For the season, that, oh, I'm not really watching every single race, or because, you know, Max is just going to walk away with it. Which we've talked about this. I think that's still not the best take to have, because I think the sport is more than just who wins P1, right? Yeah. Granted, they're going to win the Drivers' Championship at the end of the year, but it's all, there's P2 through P20, there are positions to fight for, and all these racers want to get as high up in those standings as possible, right? So I think that would have a lot of really good impacts and effects on the sport.
Yeah, well, consider this too. Remember, the whole part of the reason why they did this whole major regulation change with the cars was to make it so that the air was less dirty, so it'd be easier for the cars to pass.
100%.
So if that's the case, that cars can pass each other more easily on track, then the DRS becomes more redundant. I mean, I don't think that you need to get rid of it entirely, but I do think that limiting its use will create a element of, because think of it, you could also use it for defense. Because imagine if you were Max Verstappen, right? And somebody suddenly catches you and you haven't used your DRS the whole time. You have over 100 seconds of DRS time that you could use at the end of the race to fight back your position that the other guy might not have, because he used all of it to catch you. You know what I mean?
And you know what? You might even be able to get away with eliminating DRS zones, right? Just say, like, use it where you see fit, right? That might,
possibly.
I mean, of course you want to use it on the straights, right? That makes the most sense. But maybe you want it open just as you're flying into a straight, right? So you get that initial horsepower gain right away. I don't know. There might be some interesting things there.
I think so long as the FIA has a way of regulating the time usage, and the car has a system to where once it reaches its time threshold, that it just
you press the button, nothing happens.
You press the button, nothing happens. So long as that is in place, I think I mean, I would say there's obviously places that it's probably too dangerous to use. Like you don't want to use it in the middle of a corner. I also worry that maybe there's a safety problem, that if somebody bumps a button while they're using it mid corner accidentally, then all of a sudden they understeer into a wall. So maybe there's a problem with that.
Of course, yeah.
So maybe just I don't know. Yeah, maybe they expand where it can be used. Maybe like you can use it in the smaller straightaway sections, and it will know that you're in that section electronically, so that it will activate if it wants to use. So who knows? But
I mean, you have the sensor data for it, so it could easily be done.
I hope they consider that, because I do think that would be something smart for the rules to change to help balance the field out again. So yeah. But what other vibes? What vibes do you have going on about this race that you want to bring to the table?
All right, vibe check, y'all.
So, I mean, I think the big thing to take away outside of P-Max, right? We're going to talk about P1, P2 here. That's Lewis and George. This is a huge points haul and very successful race for Mercedes. Some excellent technical data that I think they were able to gather from this track, especially the fact that this is the testing track, right? Like this is the track to gather this data on, and I think this is great for them. So I'm really excited to see how this is going to impact their design philosophy going forward. Now in the post-race interview, Lewis said something very interesting, which is interesting because I agree with it, and I'm glad he has this take that, hey, if this doesn't get us to where we need to be in this season, at least it gives us a good foundation for next season. And that is exactly the mindset to have about it.
Exactly.
Because you can't necessarily expect to just be pulling out race wins and stuff now, right? But if they continue to get these P2, P3, P4 positions where they're right behind the Red Bulls, that's good. That means they've kind of figured something out that they have over the Aston Martins, right? Which is that, and speaking of which, they've actually jumped over Aston Martin in the Constructors' Championship now, right?
Thanks.
So
Lance.
that's major. So the foul play, the foul ball that Aston Martin had for this weekend was a huge pickup for Mercedes. So kudos to them for figuring that out.
Right.
Moving on, McLaren. This is a disaster for the team that is owned by the Kingdom of Bahrain. I always laugh anytime I think about that and remember that. My boy, what did they do to you? They massacred my boy, you know? Like, it was a good quali, and then just fumbled the bag, you know?
Well, I mean, you wonder how much of that is Norris's fault, you know, and how much of that was the team. It's tough to say, right?
Yeah, who knows? That's the problem with McLaren. You never know, right? Like I said, they come back from the smoke break, and they're like, all right, time to get back to work. If you can't get credit here, you can't get credit anywhere.
My name is Mark. You can count on it.
If anyone can tell us who and what store that is, we're not going to give you any information. You're going to get a free Fufo t-shirt.
Yes.
I'm saying that right now.
Yeah, we're making a list. We're checking it twice. We're going to find out who was right and who was not.
But McLaren, they just, who knows? Who knows what's going on? I hope they can figure things out and actually have a race result that reflects the potential of the car and what they can do in quality, because sometimes they make a good showing and I just want that to be consistent. Ferrari, Mamma Mia, we already talked about this. They have a whole segment, y'all.
Right.
Awful weekend. Just clearly, you know, getting rid of Bonotto from last season wasn't it, right? I think there's some deep structural problems, like a really deep cultural rot that's going on there that needs to just be like excised and just
Ferrari
thrown
bad
aside
right now.
Yeah. I feel bad for Charles and Carlos. I think they're two excellent drivers who are at a team that has a very excellent and storied history, but that team is not where it needs to be in order to provide them the tools and culture to make them winners, unfortunately. Aston, this is a very meh race for them. Sucks because they've been doing so well this entire season. And I was really hoping Fernando could continue his really awesome finish streak that he's been having this season. But unfortunately, wasn't the card. Stroll actually, I think, beat him in the points, right?
By a point, yeah.
Yeah, by a point.
Alonso was less than a second behind him, and I think he just didn't bother passing. I was saying that Stroll should let Alonso pass for two reasons. One, Alonso is the only reason why they were in front of Mercedes in the first place. And two, it's like Fernando's home race, and you know, it would be nice for him to have as good of a finish as possible.
Sure.
And I think it probably would have gotten on Fernando's good side and like just continued to build that relationship within the team. But at the same time, you don't want to see team orders, and Lance Stroll has to be his own guy and trying to win his own race. So, you know, I think Fernando kind of let Stroll have that one because the last couple of corners he was waving to the crowd before he even got to the checkered flag. So sure,
that's true.
Just letting it happen, you know.
Yeah, Checo, this was a great recovery race. This is as good of a result that he could have hoped for, I believe.
Right.
And I don't think
to fourth, right?
Yeah. And I don't think anyone expected the Mercedes to do as well as they did. So I think Red Bull had probably figured that they can get P1, P2. But, you know, this is a good recovery race for him. And I hope Checo can, dust himself off. And when Montreal comes, he is back in the hot seat and, gets the win. I think overall, this is a great race to watch. I really enjoyed this race. I know that may not be the feeling for those in the online community out there, but I thought it was a fun race. You got, like I said, every race that comes, you take it for what it is and you find the bright spots, and there are going to be some low points, obviously. Yeah. But pretty good race.
Well, and I think sorry, I just want to stay really quick on the behalf of both of us for this. I think that because you and I were kind of drawn to this sport from an outside perspective, not having a sort of a really good primer like DTS to kind of bring us into it, I think that our perspective on these races is inherently different because we're focusing on things that we have always focused on for forever, like the race strategy, the engineering portion of it, because we're so nerdy about that. And I'm not trying to detract from anybody in any way, because like if you like the race, you like the race for your own reasons, and that's great. But I do worry about how that is affecting the sport itself, like trying to change things in order to accommodate the DTS new fan group rather than doing for what's good for the sake of the sport. So that's where I start to get kind of conflicted feelings about it. But I do agree. I think this was a great race to watch. It wasn't the most exciting, but for what it was solid. So I agree.
Last point I'll speak to here, and Gabe and I, we've talked about this a lot. I am really tired of Helmut Marko's unhelpful commentary. Like, if it's getting out to the public, right? Because think about it this way: there's definitely, you want to make sure you keep your business inside the family, right? And make sure that you handle it all within that sphere. But the fact that we get like comments that always slip out from the Red Bull circles about, Helmut's view on how Checo, how he ranks within the team when compared to Max, that's not good, right? I could imagine if, like, let's say, like, Gabe, you and I are on a race team, right? And you are just cleaning up, right? You can P1s all the time, right? And every now and then I can get a win, but most of the time I'm P2, P3. If our team principal's like, yeah, Gabe, he's that guy, he's really a GOAT and he's a legend. He's going to go in the Hall of Fame. And, Drees, he's good. He brings in points for the team. It would definitely make me feel a type of way. Right, that, okay, I know, like, clearly I know within myself that I'm trying to beat you, or like, you're my target, you're my goal, I'm pursuing you. But to also hear from like someone who's supposed to be an advisor to the team and like a sage on the team that I'm not as good, and if another newer, younger model comes along, then I'll be dropped, and we'll put that person in my place to drive the car. That would definitely mess with my psyche over time. Maybe not immediately, right? But it would definitely. There's some kind of like resistance that can be built up internally, right? And I hope Checo is not dealing with that and facing that, because as much as Formula One is about the performance of the vehicle and the performance of the driver, it's also a mental game too, right? So this can't be helping him. So no. I'll end it there. I just think he is not helping team camaraderie.
No, I agree. And like the F1 is not unfamiliar to people making negative comments towards their team or their teammates. That's happened a lot. But I don't ever really remember hearing it from management, especially because like you never heard Mercedes say that about Bottas.
No, I mean? Exactly.
Like, you never heard them saying, well, Bottas he's out of contention after 5 races. Like, give me a break.
Dude,
like,
that's what I'm saying.
It just doesn't happen. And so it just shows such a lack of confidence in Perez that only 6 races into a 22 race season, you're already saying that Max is going to win it all. And that Sergio was never a real threat. It's just like, dude, he's the guy that races for you. Are you serious?
Yeah.
Like,
right.
You guys are throwing all of your eggs in this one basket, and it is not good. Like, no wonder Max cannot keep a teammate for more than a year and a half.
Yeah. Like,
it's not just his fault. It's also the team. They just their attitude towards drivers that are not winning for them is terrible.
Yeah, I don't like it.
It needs to be. Yeah, it's really bad. It's really bad.
All right. Well, hey, everyone, thanks for listening to another episode of F1 or F Off. You can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts. If you want to hit us up, you can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Twitter at F1 or F Off. You can email us at F1 or F Off podcast at gmail.com. Give us a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcast. That really helps us out a lot. And be sure to share with family and friends.
All right. Peace out, y'all.
Peace.
Peace.